Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is April Carter, and I am a proud team member with Tennessee Nonprofit Network. And I'm excited to bring you a sneak peek into the 2025 Regional Nonprofit Storytelling Summit. Now, it's happening April the 23rd in Knoxville, Tennessee, and registration is still open. You still have an opportunity to register, but we'll talk about that in a moment. But right now, I am so excited. And I'm so proud. My favorite team member, don't tell anyone I told you this, my favorite team member here at Tennessee Nonprofit Network and a fellow speaker at the Storytelling Summit is going to share some insights about his session and just about the power of storytelling. So Kevin Dean is going to present the 6 questions for a story. He's the president and CEO of Tennessee Nonprofit Network. And you may have seen him around a time or two, but he has a very diverse, a very experienced background. But one of them, his secret is around marketing and storytelling. He truly does it all. So Kevin, welcome.
Thanks for having me. And I'm only your favorite because I sign your paychecks, April.
Yeah, and you do it so beautifully. Thank you. One of the great parts of telling a story. I've known you for many, many years, and I can go on and on about all of the accolades and the wonderful things you do. But you know Dr. Dean very well. So if you can just give us just a brief overview of your background, who you are, and then tell us why you were excited to present at the Nonprofit Storytelling Summit.
Sure. So my background, my undergrad was actually in film and television production, and I had a minor in creative writing. So stories are my thing. I will admit to accidentally putting a couple of board members to sleep at board meetings. So I think my stories might get a little long, but they're hopefully impactful when they need to be. But I've been in nonprofit now for 23 years. So I got started as an AmeriCorps worker at Volunteer Memphis, and so I started out at the Volunteer Center and then worked my way up. This is my second leadership role running a nonprofit. So I've been in the trenches for a long time and done a lot of fundraising, done a lot of advocacy work in my career. So I've built a career on telling stories about success stories, the challenges that nonprofits are facing, and so. I storytell every day, either some crazy story that something happened to me. Y'all are very familiar with all of my crazy antics. Things just sort of happen to me, and some of them are fun and some of them are not. But also, I tell stories for a living, and that's what we do in the nonprofit sector.
Yes, and I love how the heart of your stories always ties back into our work here at TNN and the work of our partners across Tennessee. So thank you for having all of those things happen to you so you can thread it through, our work here. So now the title of your session is the 6 questions for a story. Now, without giving away, don't tell us the questions yet, but
Okay, all
just
right.
if you can just give us a brief overview of what attendees can expect in that session and just some tidbits.
Yeah. So there are there's this framework called the 6 questions of a story,
Mhm.
and it's very easy. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but in this session we're going to talk about how to frame a story out. It's very, very simple. It's actually I think we make storytelling a lot harder than it is. And it's really about just like who is it, what's it about, and what challenges did they face, and how they overcome those challenges. Those are some of the questions, but not perfect, not exactly. But really, we're going to talk about how to craft that story around, and not just from a fundraising standpoint, but we're going to use it as a framework for your advocacy work, for your donor retention and donor recruitment strategies. So we're gonna take any audience. This applies to any audience you're talking to. So whether it's a politician or an individual donor or a foundation, you can use this framework for any story you tell. Whether it's your annual fund letter or a case study or a case for support, or you're advocating for a law, or fighting a law and telling a story about somebody who's been impacted by the work that you're doing or impacted by a bad law or a good law. you can use this for anything, and that's what I like about it so much is I actually have the 6 questions there. You can't see it, but it's on my it's on a post-it note on my bulletin board that I've had since I started. Yeah, no, I've had it for like 8 years. I've been here 8 years, and I've had it up there for 8 years. So when I'm telling a story, I do look at that and use it personally, so I'm a personal success story for the six storytelling questions.
Now, I love that this framework, and I love that it applies to just about any audience. Now, can anyone within the organization implement this framework, or this just a leadership framework?
No. Anytime we all have to tell our stories. We all have to tell stories in nonprofits, whether you're fundraising or not. You're going to be telling stories to people, and stories are how you get your message across. If you look at the research, people don't necessarily respond as well to statistics or data. They want that one individual story of the one success story or the one person who had to overcome challenges, and that's the story you have to tell. People psychologically, it's hard for us if we talk about the 100,000 people who are hungry in Memphis right now. It's hard for us to digest that and see our place and how we can help. That's why we have to focus on that one story of the one success or the one person who's facing, really, really big challenges or obstacles that we can say, okay, I can see myself helping that person. So with this framework, it helps you sort of identify that one person, and not necessarily not at all exploit them, but tell their story so that you can use them as a great example for how your organization is successful, or what challenges we still need to overcome.
Yeah, and I love that, you talk about the framework and the different steps, and identifying that it's not just about data or numbers, but we're not saying that you shouldn't have those things,
Oh,
but
absolutely.
the numbers and the data need to be a part of the story. You can't tell a good story without data, and you can't have data without you can have the data, a good data that's impactful, without it being able to translate to a story. And so with your background, Dr.
Yep.
Dean, you've done it all. You lead us so wonderfully right now, but you haven't been a president and CEO your entire career. You've done development, you've done film, volunteer management, and all of those things. So you've heard some stories, and you've been engaged with some nonprofits.
Yeah.
So in your experience, how has the power of storytelling transformed organizations, especially how they engage in the community and with the people they serve?
Yeah. Well, I think that an organization's ability to tell their story and the story of the people that they're serving and the communities they're serving is directly correlated to their success. If you can't tell a great story and tell your organization's story, tell your own story, tell the story of the people you're serving and the communities you're serving, then you're destined to fail. That's how you get people on board. That's how you inspire people. Right now, we're actually recruiting for new board members across the state of Tennessee. And every meeting that I have with these potential board members right now, I'm telling the story of the organization, and that is getting people fired up about what we do. It's the programming's great, but the stories are what matter. The stories are what hook people in. The data is important, but the stories are what get people involved. So and every step of the way I've taken in my career, I started off as an AmeriCorps worker. I was like lowest on the totem pole in the organization. I had to tell stories starting off. I had to tell stories of the programs or the people in the programs we were serving. The stories of the volunteers that got involved, and now they're making this huge difference. The kids that we got to volunteer at the programs 23 years ago, or now some of them are now in the in the nonprofit sector. You have to be able to tell those stories to not only fundraising. We always connect it to fundraising, but from advocacy and public policy work, there's storytelling involved. From volunteer management and recruitment, there's storytelling involved. When you're recruiting volunteers, you have to tell a story. You can't say, our organization needs volunteers. People aren't going to respond to that. You have to say, look at little Timmy. Timmy, has a baseball bat, but no coach. You know, you have to tell that story about Timmy to get them to come on board. So that's how you get people excited and inspired by what you're doing in your organization. So I've had to tell stories. I've been telling stories my whole life. Just because I'm a natural storyteller. I can be a little long-winded in those stories, but but also I've been telling stories because I've raised millions and millions of dollars telling those stories, you know.
Absolutely. And it's one thing that you've taught me about telling your story, that it doesn't have to necessarily connect back to the organization that you are with, but it does connect back to public policy and advocacy. When you encouraged me to tell my story of before I am where I am now, I'm so blessed and to have the opportunity to be in the position that I'm in, but I haven't always been here. And there were times when I was working full time, working really hard, and didn't have all of the resources that I needed. So I've navigated some of the challenges that a lot of clients of nonprofits navigate, and it was difficult. And then just sharing that story and seeing how that blog post went viral, people were able to connect and saying that I didn't know that you went through that. It was like, yes, I absolutely went through that. But that story, even though it wasn't specifically about Tennessee Nonprofit Network, it connected back to the work that we're doing around public policy and advocacy, and how we're fighting for organizations. So yes, I am a believer. Thank you, Dr. Dean, for encouraging me to tell that story. And so with all of that, you've kind of hinted to it, and I know what I think, but I need you to answer this. So if you were to consider yourself one of the two, you got to pick one. You can't say both. One of the two things, which one do you think relates to you most? Are you more of a natural storyteller? You love to tell stories in most situations, or are you more of a listener? You like to consume stories. You love to hear other people's stories. Not saying that the other's bad, but if you
Yeah.
had to pick one.
Well, I know what you're probably going to say, and it's probably going to be we're going to be in alignment. So I am super ADHD, like diagnosed ADHD. I'm not a great listener. That just I have to work at it. It's something I've been working on my whole life. But I talk I can talk a lot. Even though I'm an introvert, I once I get going, this mouth just keeps going. So I think I'm a natural storyteller. Um, I'm an observer, but maybe not a listener. So yeah, so I'm definitely a storyteller.
I agree with that. I was hoping you wouldn't say listener, and then we have to have an
Because it'd
awkward
be a
moment of
lie.
silence of me looking crazy. But yes, but you are a good storyteller, so we do have that. And so with this next question, you can't pick yourself.
Okay.
So if you could have dinner with any storyteller, past or present, a storyteller in any form, who would it be and why?
Um,
You can't pick me either. Okay.
um, I used to run the book festival when I was at Literacy Mid-South, my previous job. I ran the book festival, and I got the treat of going out to dinner and actually I had some of the authors in my home, like Scott Heim, who wrote Mysterious Skin, stayed with me, when he came in town. If you've seen the movie, it's a hard movie to watch, but like I've had the authors in my home. I had dinner with the guy who wrote Big Fish, so I've actually had dinner with storytellers, and I would have dinner with anybody that I've ever met through the book festivals, or the book festival years ago. Mary Roach is one of my favorite authors. She wrote Stiff. She's a journalist who writes about like sort of scientific stuff. And I got to meet her at a book festival one time in Arkansas. And I would have dinner with her every night because she has so many great stories, and she tells these great scientific stories that I'm not a science guy, but like I love the way she tells a story, and she personalizes these stories so well. So I'd probably pick her or somebody like her.
Wonderful. And that would be a fantastic conversation. You know how to connect with people, and I can only imagine the questions that you will have prepared for her over
Oh
dinner.
yeah.
So, Dr. Dean, thank you so much for going over your session and giving us a little bit of insight about you and your session. Now, if someone wanted to go down a rabbit hole of learning about Dr. Dean before the April 23rd summit, how can they connect with you, learn more about your work and about the Tennessee Nonprofit Network?
Well, go to tnnonprofits.org for sure. Start there. But we are also, I blog a lot through Tennessee Nonprofit Network. So if you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll have a blog post a day, and a lot of those are actually stories. A lot of them start off as stories to sort of drive home the point. I think I posted one today about the X-Men movies, and I actually connected it back to the nonprofit sector. So it talks about my disappointment in the X-Men franchise because I'm a complete nerd. Check me out on LinkedIn, and check us definitely out at tnnonprofits.org.
Well, if you are also a complete nerd or just someone who wants to learn more about storytelling and you need a simple framework that you can follow, be sure to join us April 23rd in Knoxville for the Nonprofit Storytelling Summit and Dr. Dean's session, the 6 questions for a story. And registration is still open. We have a few spots remaining, so don't miss this opportunity. Visit us at tnnonprofits.org. That's TN Nonprofits with an S. .org, and go over to the events tab, and you'll have all the information you need about Dr. Dean's session, our keynote speaker, and other breakout session speakers and their presentations. So be sure to register before we are sold out, and we look forward to seeing you April 23rd in Knoxville for the Storytelling Summit. Thanks so much, and we'll see you on the next episode.